your Christmas packages might not arrive this year. And the reason why reveals a crisis that's been building for months. Canada Post workers just walked off the job, and the timing couldn't be worse for millions of Canadians counting on holiday deliveries. The Canada Post strike officially began November 15, 2025, at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers issued strike notices for both urban and rural mail carriers, legally enabling the largest postal workers' strike in recent Canadian history. This isn't a surprise development. This is the culmination of labor disputes that started in late 2024 and have been escalating throughout 2025. Canada Post operations have shut down nationwide. No mail is being processed. No parcels are being delivered. Some post offices have closed entirely. The Canada Post strike 2025 impacts every single Canadian who relies on mail service, but the consequences extend far beyond delayed letters. This is about the future of public postal service in Canada, and whether postal workers have any say in that future. So what caused the Canada Post workers' strike? The trigger was government announcements to fundamentally transform Canada Post operations. The federal government plans to end door-to-door mail delivery to nearly all households within the next decade. They want to close rural post offices across the country. They're allowing Canada Post to raise prices more easily without oversight. And they're changing mail transport and delivery standards that have existed for generations. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers sees these changes as an existential threat. CUPW's strike action isn't just about wages or benefits. This is about defending the entire concept of universal public postal service. Union leaders argue that ending door-to-door delivery disproportionately hurts seniors, people with disabilities, and rural Canadians who depend on accessible mail service. The Canada Post negotiations have been ongoing with intermittent rotating strikes since late September 2025. That's right. This isn't the first strike action. Workers have been using rotating strikes for months trying to pressure Canada Post and the federal government into meaningful negotiations. But Canada Post and CUPW remain far apart on fundamental issues. The postal worker wages dispute is one sticking point. CUPW is demanding competitive compensation that reflects the physically demanding nature of postal work. But the bigger issues are part-time staffing levels and the government-mandated reforms that workers had no input on. Canada Post wants flexibility to hire more part-time workers with fewer benefits. The union argues this undermines full-time jobs and creates a two-tier workforce. Previous Canada Post proposals included some concessions. They offered to end compulsory overtime, which has been a major complaint from exhausted postal workers. They proposed signing bonuses to attract new employees. But these offers don't address the fundamental gaps between the parties. The union isn't interested in small concessions when the entire structure of Canada Post is being dismantled. The Canada Post strike impact is already massive and getting worse every day. Businesses, especially small businesses that rely on affordable shipping through Canada Post, face catastrophic consequences. Major shipping companies like UPS and FedEx can't absorb the volume that Canada Post normally handles. Their prices are significantly higher, which puts small businesses at a competitive disadvantage. Holiday shipping disruptions are the immediate crisis. November and December are critical months for retail businesses that depend on mail-order sales. The Canada Post strike timing essentially guarantees millions of packages won't reach customers before Christmas. Previous strike phases already resulted in millions of missed parcel deliveries. This extended shutdown multiplies that problem exponentially. Mail delivery disruptions affect more than just Christmas presents. Prescription medications get delivered by mail. Government documents and benefits checks come through Canada Post. Legal notices and time-sensitive business correspondence rely on postal service. When Canada Post shuts down, essential communications stop flowing, and vulnerable Canadians suffer the most. The Canada Post labor dispute reflects broader tensions in Canadian labor relations. Workers across multiple sectors are pushing back against government and corporate policies that prioritize efficiency and cost-cutting over job security and service quality. Postal workers are on the front lines of this battle, and their strike has national implications beyond the postal service. Federal mediators remain engaged trying to broker an agreement, but progress has been slow. The government's position is complicated because they mandated many of the reforms that triggered the strike. They can't easily reverse course without admitting their transformation plan was flawed. Meanwhile, Canada Post management is caught between government directives and union demands. Rural Canada faces particularly severe consequences from the Canada Post strike and the planned reforms. Rural post offices serve as community hubs, not just mail drop-off locations. Closing these offices means longer travel distances for basic services. Ending door-to-door delivery in rural areas where homes are spread far apart creates significant hardship, especially in winter conditions. The The door-to-door delivery changes represent the most controversial reform. In urban areas, Canada Post has already shifted many neighborhoods to community mailboxes. The plan is to expand this nationwide, forcing nearly all Canadians to pick up mail from centralized locations rather than receiving delivery at their doors. Supporters say this saves money and reduces delivery vehicle emissions. Critics argue it's a fundamental degradation of public service. Canada Post price increases are part of the government's justification for reforms. They claim postal service is financially unsustainable at current pricing and service levels. But CUPW counters that Canada Post has been profitable in recent years, when allowed to operate without artificial constraints. The union argues that gutting service to chase short-term savings destroys a valuable public asset. Business leaders and industry experts are sounding alarms about the Canada Post strike extended impact. The Retail Council of Canada estimates billions in lost sales if the strike continues through the holiday season. Small businesses that can't afford expensive alternative shipping are particularly vulnerable. Some may not survive an extended postal shutdown during their most critical revenue period. The Canada Post holiday season crisis puts enormous pressure on negotiators to reach a deal quickly. But quick deals often favor management because unions lose leverage as public frustration grows. CUPW faces a difficult calculation. Hold out for meaningful concessions and risk public backlash, or accept insufficient terms and watch postal service deteriorate. Public opinion on the Canada Post strike is divided. Some Canadians support postal workers defending their jobs and public service. Others are frustrated by disrupted deliveries and blame union intransigence. Media coverage tends to focus on inconvenience consumers rather than the policy changes that trigger the strike, which shapes public perception against workers. The government postal reforms underlying this crisis didn't emerge from nowhere. They reflect a broader ideological push to privatize or reduce public services by claiming they're too expensive. Postal service becomes a test case. If the government successfully implements these changes despite worker opposition, other public services face similar transformations. International comparisons show varied approaches to postal service. Some countries have maintained robust public postal systems. Others have privatized or dramatically scaled back service. Canada is choosing a path that reduces service while keeping nominal public ownership. CUPW argues this is the worst of both worlds, delivering neither efficiency nor accessibility. The Canada Post strike resolution requires compromise from all sides. The union needs to secure protections for full-time jobs and maintain service standards. Canada Post needs operational flexibility to adapt to changing mail volumes. The government needs to acknowledge that reforms imposed without worker input create labor crises rather than solving financial problems. As negotiations continue, the clock ticks toward a lost holiday season for millions of Canadians. Every day without mail service increases economic damage and public frustration. The pressure on negotiators is immense, but fundamental disagreements remain unresolved. Mediators are working to find middle ground, but the parties entered negotiations from such different positions that bridging the gap is extremely difficult. What happens next determines not just when your packages arrive, but the future of postal service in Canada. Will door-to-door delivery survive? Will rural post offices stay open? Will postal workers maintain decent full-time jobs with fair wages? The Canada Post strike forces Canadians to confront these questions at the worst possible time. But these are questions that needed answering regardless. What do you think? Should the government reverse its postal reforms to end the strike? Are postal workers justified in striking during the holiday season? Can Canada Post remain financially viable with current service levels? Share your perspective in the comments. Subscribe for continuous updates on the Canada Post strike, negotiation developments, and analysis of how this labor dispute reshapes Canadian postal service. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss breaking news on strike resolutions, business impacts, and the future of mail delivery in Canada. This crisis is far from over.